amazing wherewithal in the world because of the finances that you have. And where it came from isn't really that important. And it's more about who are you and what are you doing in the world with it. And that's what I loved about how we started this show in terms of Gail Sylvia and her passion around, supporting people and especially women in terms of connecting their values to their dollars and their networks and their capacity to really bring their wealth forward and moving the world the way they want it to go. And, Jamie, you and I have spoken quite a bit about hyper-agency. I was wondering if maybe you could speak a little bit about that as well.
Absolutely, and I think you're playing into the idea. Hyper-agency is a fancy way to say, how can we leverage any gift that we have in a way that makes the biggest impact? And wealth holders are able to use not only their wealth, oftentimes their influence, who they know, to make big changes. So, for example, I'll use Leslie Wexner, who's a tremendous philanthropist, as an example. And he, years ago, in sort of the infancy of his philanthropy, and for people who don't know him, he found the clothing store The Limited and Henry Bendel and many other stores. At one point was, I think the fourth wealthiest man in the country. And he started a small party it was actually for United Way, that donors had to give a certain amount. Say the party was, for people who gave a gift of $500,000 a year. And this was a big increase in a small community. He's from the Midwest. And he would have just a fabulous blowout party. And at first people thought, well, why are you spending so much money on this party? But what they saw was that people really wanted to go to this party and be part of it. So all of a sudden, the gifts really started to increase. So instead of taking maybe his money and making it a direct gift, he was a hyper agent, and that he provided a platform for even further increased giving and outreach for his organization, which is a really adventurous way. And I know that, other people, particularly with the Giving Pledge, are using those ideas of how can we leverage knowledge, how can we team up with people, other organizations, so that we're not recreating the wheel. And I want to go back to something you said, Emily, about the playfulness and the humor, because I think that is so important. And another game that we, I call it a game, but really an exercise we do with clients is what then? So often we have these fears that if you and I were playing the game that you said, Emily, and I practiced telling you that I won the lottery and it really came in big for me, I might have all these fears that you're going to answer or think something about me. So I play the game often with clients. Okay, so what's going to happen next? And it's your worst fear. And they might say, well, the person can't believe that I said that and thinks I'm awful. Okay, and then what next? And you keep going until it gets almost to a ridiculous place. I mean, I've done it before around public speaking. You keep going to something like, I pass out in the middle of the auditorium. And people really get to see that some of those fears, it's like the bathrobe on the couch or on your chair at night. It looks like a monster as long as it's dark out. But as soon as you turn on the light, that horrible fear of what would happen if you just said, I'm here for 2 weeks because I chose to spend my money that way and to be in enjoyment with it. Thanks for asking. And cut it off then and realize, the world probably won't end. But it's a matter of practicing and playing, definitely.
Yeah, and, that's such a good example of one of my favorite phrases that I love to use around fear. And I can't remember where I heard it from. So if somebody knows where this is from, please let me know. And fear is the acronym for false evidence appearing real. And
yes.
What an exercise like what you just described does is it really allows you to bring forward just how not real the fears are that keep us from really standing in, this is who I am. And, how you think or how you interpret it really doesn't need to have an adverse impact on me. And we give a lot of sway and power to spoken and unspoken fears that really drive us in a lot of ways. And anything we can do to bring those to the surface, to really look at them in a very safe environment with somebody who we know is not going to judge us and who is going to really be able to support us in moving through them, can be very helpful. And I think it'd be great to speak a little bit about some fears that inheritors have that are real and that are major concerns. And one of the biggest ones that keeps an inheritor especially from speaking really wide open and let me just tell everybody and have it hang out is, am I going to be taken advantage of? Once somebody knows that I have this access to resources that make it so I can stay at a world-class resort for 2 weeks or a month or however long I choose to, what is it that they may see that they might want to take advantage of? And are they going to start wanting to hang around me and be with me because of my money and what it can do for them, as opposed to who I am and what it means to be my friend?
It's a big thing to take into your body, too. I mean, I really want people to breathe in. We all want to be liked for who we are, not for, what we look like or what we might offer somebody else. And I think you really hit the nail on the head that is a true fear. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's real evidence that that's going to happen.
Right. And what we are really strong proponents of when we work with folks that, let's get to the heart of this, let's speak into that, is one, you're not alone in feeling that. And, it's a grounded fear. And what do we do about it? What can we do to make it so that when somebody finds out, either through your choice of letting them know, or maybe they've Googled you, and people can find out all kinds of information about you now just by having your name. And one of the things that is so vitally important is that you have a strong sense of who you are and that you can trust yourself in how you assess the other person and what are their motivations. So some people come from a place of suspicion and really needing the people in front of them to earn their trust and respect, and they can make people go through quite a few hoops to do that. Some people have their own way of doing their due diligence about the background of the person that's with them. Some people really have trusted people in their lives that they know have consistently shown up again and again for them, irregardless of whether money has been involved in the interactions. And they will look to them for their assessments about this new person that's in their life in terms of what they see, and not just go by their own personal assessment of that other person. What else have you seen, Jamie, that really supports people in feeling empowered with who shows up in front of them and making sure that they can assess if this person is somebody who's trustworthy and worthy of really being part of the inner circle and knowing even more details about them?
I think you're hitting on such a crucial point that, whether we have inheritance or not, we're constantly doing that with new people anyway. We're assessing what are their motivations. Is this somebody who has shares likes with me? Is this somebody who I feel comfortable and confident with? And in all of these situations, it's a growing process. I think sometimes what happens is when these questions get asked about, going back to the example you gave, Emily, so what building is it? Oh, what floor? Those are questions that make people start to distrust because it feels like there's like a digging for information. It might just be curiosity. I've often found too that inheritors can be so sensitive to those questions that even when they're seemingly asked innocent ways, it feels very probing. So really also being able to stop conversations that you don't want to happen and, to get to know somebody a little better, oh, I'm so glad you know somebody in my building. It's really not the conversation I want to have here at Rancho La Puerto. Could we talk about another topic? and feeling free to really guide those conversations and get to know people better on another level. You could ask about the person's hobbies or interests, which, by the way, hobbies and interests can often be also a little bit of a funky question, because sometimes someone's hobbies and interests. I work with a client who brought to life again old motorcycles, and then he would race them. So that also had an underlying current of having a significant amount of wealth to be able to do that. That wasn't he wasn't a mechanic. This was something he did, for the love of it. So those can be tricky, but really getting to guide the conversation where you want to. What walk did you go on at Rancho La Puerto that was interesting to you, and not feeling like you have to be, and this again will come out so clearly in our conversation next week with Keith and Susan, you have to be the victim of a huge meteor coming at you and attacking you, and that you don't have any control in terms of how to move to get out of the way. That's, I think, the thing that or most with clients is, how can you take the reins back over and control how the conversation goes, so that you do have the opportunity to assess, longer period of time, if you like this person, if you feel like they're trustworthy, if you feel like you want to move forward into more intimate conversations.
Yeah, it's so important. One of the things that occurs to me from how you just said that is that may be a big leap for some people to just, stop a conversation cold and redirect it. I want to give a couple of other great examples of ways that you can go about taking control of a conversation if you're not happy with where it's going, or you have an assessment that, no, this is a person that I don't actually want to know a lot of details about me. Like, I've watched how they've moved with information. I'm hearing them speak about other people in ways that I'm not comfortable with. You may have different pieces of data that are letting you know, no, this is not somebody I want to talk about a lot with. So some other examples that, would be totally appropriate in those situations and not cause offense and not even call to attention your discomfort would be things like, with those questions about, where do you live and what building, I live on the west side of town near one of my favorite parks where I love to take my dog, and there's this great community of people that bring their dogs out to the park, and we just really enjoy each other, and oh my gosh, let me tell you this story about this one dog. And you direct the conversation to what you really love and are passionate about that doesn't divulge any more details about you than you want to express. And then if they come back again, like, well, which park? And it's like, then you could just gently say, oh, my gosh, I've so enjoyed having this conversation. I see some friends of mine over there that I really want to connect with before the next program. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the stay here. I'm sure I'll see you again. And you just graciously extricate yourself from the conversation, but where there's no making anybody feel bad or feeling badly about how you're doing it, just very elegantly and gracefully moving towards what it is that you want and feeling completely at peace around that you're not trapped in having to stay in a conversation that you're not happy with how it's flowing or moving.
I love when you take my big leaps and you boil them down. I think you're absolutely right. And knowing that we each have that right in our life to gracefully extricate ourselves from whatever we are. And again, this is where I think that sense of clarity of feeling very confident in yourself that you don't have to be subject to those kinds of conversations. You are allowed to say, thank you very much. I'm going to go grab, a glass of wine, or whatever it is. There's ways, and people can rehearse having a couple of those kind of get me out of conversation things to say, so that they know that when those conversations come up, they have the ability. And the more